Okay, good morning everybody. We're going to start from the top of Daf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph and Yetz Hashem get towards the end of Lamed Ches Amud Beis. Let's jump right into it by the two dots. The Cheres Hadoryani. The earthenware of the Hadrani, the Mishnah told us, is Aser. So Frek the Gemara, what is this? My Hadrani, I'm reviewed, I'm a Shmuel. What happened was there was this Cheres Shel Hadrani as Kesar and Ki Aser Avdimi. What happened was this Hadrani is, what did he do? Amar Ki Aser Avdimi Amar Karka Besula Haisa Shel Avda Adam Ma'ilam. Hadrani went to Karka, Sula, since it never had anything, it was never planted before, it was very powerful. We find such a concept of Vasra that they would do every other year with the Karkas. He went to Karka Besula. And Avodah Venata, and he went, Hadrani went and he planted wine over there. Ve'ramilei lechamra begulfi chivri. The Nakuda is, he went and he planted this very strong wine and he put it in these jugs, new jugs. Chivri literally means white. And these jugs were able to absorb this wine. And then they would break it up into little pieces. And they would carry it with them wherever they went to Mechama. Whenever they would arrive, they would soak it. Basically, the shards, the Torah would turn into very strong wine. Like that, they had it almost like a drug. So therefore, Hadrani did it. He was basically the inventor of such a type of chap. So it's called the Cheres Hadrani. Zak the Mishnah, it's us. To show us how powerful their wine is, even if they'll dip it 3 times, their wine, it would be like our Risha and our first time. The question is, you have these shards on a simple level, it has yain nesach in it. That's the whole concept. The halacha is, this is the shaila, can you use it for what? For the legs of a bed. What's the shaila? So on a simple level, we all know, Morgan later says that if a person goes to an akum and he needs his money back, so the akum says, okay, let's make a deal, don't worry, I'll sell these getchkas and like that I'll have money for you. The halach is, the Yehudi, the Yid, is not able to accept such a t'nai because what he's happy that the getchkas, the Zarah is getting sold. So the same thing over here in a simple level when you have these chayremita, you don't really care about this yayin, the problem with the yayin nesach, you just care about what? That it's support for your bet. The shaila is, lamaisa, it's in there and it's called Reitze B'Kiyuma Deidavacher. Lamaisa, you want this yayin nesach because you need these legs of the bet. So that's the shaila, is it usher or not? So it comes out lamaisa, if you hold, we're going to see the machlekes, Reitze B'Kiyuma Deidavacher or not. If the halachas is usher, then the halacha is Reitze B'Kiyuma Deidavacher is usher. So the whole bet, the chayremita on a simple level will be usher. But if you tell me it's mutter, so it comes out that Cheres Hadrani is only usher to what? Only usher to sell it to a guy who's going to use this invention. Take it and soak it for the yain. So what is the halacha? Tashma de Belazar Rabbi Yechanan chad usher v'chad chori. One said it's mutter, one said it's usher. V'helchasa command usher. If you look in the guys over there, they bring down from the Rosh. The Lamaisa, he wasn't gairis these lashon of helchasa. Frak the Gemara, Mesa, we're going on the kasha on the who, on the one that says it's mekel, right? So became a day of acher. Had drudra and varakavos. We're talking about these leather jars. We have these bottles shalayv de kechavim. And what happened is yain shel Yisrael konas bahen. The halacha is it's also b'shtia u'motabana. Shtia is a problem again because these bottles we're saying on a simple level you can't drink from it because someone it's absorbed. Hey, Shimon ben Guda. Very important, Guda. We're going to see there's a different person later. He himself said it's mutter to drink. Means everybody else, the Chachamim argued. What is the halacha regarding these leather of Oivdei Kachavim? So if a person has these leather, the saddle, the halacha is you're not able to use it as a saddle for a donkey. Now think about it, the saddle, very nice, there's yain in it, but who cares? The reality is you're not using it for the yain, you're using it for a saddle. And what is the sevik tani the aser? So again, the kasha is leman the amar that's meter, but writes it b'kiyumel de davar acher. On that he says l'tamech kankanim shalai de kachavim should also be lisu lemitzvah, it should be also to buy and sell. So what's the difference? Maishna noidos and Maishna kankanim. Why is kankanim mutter? On that Zakravi, you know what shot? That the chiluk between dafka the saddle is aser. Amar Rabbi Gzeira shemivaka noidai vitlano vitpreno gabi noidai. On a simple level, it means that what's going to happen is you're going to have your saddle in a chanamit kiyuma de davacha, but in a scenario where your barrel, where you're using these flasks, etc., rips. So you need a patch. You go to the saddle. and you use it as a patch, and therefore you're going to be mitzvah the yain eventually. So the problem is you're having direct anah from the yain. Right? So then you still have the question, on that, by the cheres, by the case of that dranion, again, it's very strong, it's very powerful, it's very distinct. We're going to see this also in the future blood. There's such a concept. When you pour stuff into certain zachen that has no kiyum, it's like thrown into tit, we're going to see later, so therefore it's not considered anything in its mutter. We just quoted the brayso that it said the lefnei Gamliel. Or meaning, you're telling me that what they were in Ma'adir Gamliel, yain haba, again, you have these leather bottles of the chavim. Also, b'shtiya mutav and hate Shimon ben Guda. Over here, it's so far the same name. They change it v'haydulai because we're going to see the first teretz. It was a different person. V'haydulai. So what are you telling me? My haydulai clearly says haydulai over there in the second brayso the chaytz mefesh stira. And that the Gemara answers my haydulai the kamar asam. Call siyasai. There they argued over benai avada his son, my delay, and that's what the second price is talking about. It's talking about the son. Ibe sema gudulachot the gadalachot. Someone else, his name was Gadan. When they heard it the second time around, when you hear something twice, eventually it might. Very nice the first time, like delay. The second person already started opening his mouth. Then they were maiditim. The Mishnah told us varus levuvin. We said it's a very gruesome act. The way to do Avodah Zarah, they would take a live animal, they would puncture a very specific, a circular hole. We learned, we're going to see an elongated hole is asr. They didn't do it. Sorry, it's mutter because they didn't do Avodah Zarah. The Avodah Zarah is dafka, a circle. They would take out the skin and pull out the heart while it was live, and that was their Avodah Zarah. So the Mishnah tells us when you see the skin of such a animal, we're assuming that it was done for Avodah Zarah. Tana Rabbanan, Ezar Lavav, Kol Shekarua Keneged Aleif. It's directly against the heart when you look at the skin. The Kaiba Kamin Aruva. And again, it's very in a simple level. We see that it was cut like the window. Window over here, we're trying to say on the top, basically, it's circular. So, yeshal of kair adam, if it has what? Kair literally means the cross, but the point is you see dried blood on it, then it's usr, because we say, Zok Rashi, the Shemechai Nikra, when you did it, there was a life. Ein alav kair adam motor. However, when I'm in base top of the Hamad, in a simple level, if there's no blood, we could assume the elamai happened after the animal's alive. You didn't salt it. Milchai, Asem Milchai, Haverasa again, Hevira, they bring that guy from the Ivitz. But on a simple level, we could say, Shkoyach. Yes, there was blood, but now they salted it, there's no more blood, and that's why you don't see it, and therefore it would still be us. Reb Shimon Gamliel is Machakar Shalai Agol, Aser, Mashuch, Mutter. Again, Mashuch means elongated. On a simple level, it's like a circle. Like you sit and you smash it, it becomes a different shape. Elongated, and that the halacha is it's mutter because that wasn't the derech for the Avodah Zarah. Amr Rav Yosef, Amr Rav Yehuda, Mishmul. The halacha is Reb Shimon Gamliel. The mashuch again is mutter. Amr Abaya, halacha. When you say the halacha is like Rashbag, it sounds like what? People argue mechlal de pligi. So Rav Yosef tells Abaya, well, again, no one's arguing. So what do you really care? Ben cholkim alechaluk and halacha is kamaisa. I said that's the halacha. Why are you asking me halacha mechlal de pligi? On that. Abaya tells Rabbi Yosef, Amalek, what am I just singing songs? On a simple level, he's trying to say is, what's the point of saying something that the halacha, if there's no real practical nafkamina, the Torah for no, we don't just say stam. Why in the world did he have to tell us the halacha? And that's what he said. If it's on the way to Avodah Kechavim, on a simple level, it's mutter. It's mutter bahana. Man Tanam Reb Chia Rabbi Yechanan the like Reb Elazar Karbi Elazar the Karbi Elazar Ha'amar Stam Machshavas Avodah Kechavim is Avodah Kechavim, and therefore since he wants to do it, it's ready. Has the halacha of Avodah Zarah. V'hayotze we learned Aser Mepnei Shu Kezev Chei Meisim My Taima Yefshe the Leka Tikroives Avodah Kechavim, and therefore it's mamish considered Avodah Zarah. Man, it's Rebuda B'Meseiri the Tanya Rebuda B'Meseiri Minayin the Tikroives Avodah Kechavim that watch Mitame. Ba'oil, shenem, like it says in the Pasuk, it's under the Ba'apar, they attach themselves to this Avodah Zarah. V'yoichlu zivchei meisim. That tell us that what? Ma mace, just like a mace, we're learning in Tzatz about no mitama ba'oil. The Rashi brings it down from the Gemara. Later we're going to see B'tama Shamir, we made a Gzer Shava earlier. After Kroivus Avodah Kechavim, the halacha is mitama ba'oil. We're saying ha'halchin l'tarfus. When they go into their, their place where they would go a few times a year, whenever they would go, it's asurin lasis v'lasis mimoin. You're not allowed to do business, you're not allowed to do anything because we're suing, because when they get there, they're going to what? They're going to thank the Avodah Zarah. Shmuel. It depends. Why? Because he's going to go thank his getchka. However, bechazara, it's mutter on the way back already, it's not a problem. He's not going to go turn around. It's already history, he's on the way home, he just wants to get home. However, the Yisrael is much worse. Why? He might be we always believe a Yid will be chayzer b'tshuva. So we can assume that what? He'll do tshuva and he won't go. However, bechazara, once he goes, he's worse than the Yid. Then Asr Kivon, the Avik Bar, Mahader Adar. Once he goes, Zok Rashi, Loshanim, he attaches himself to Avodah Zarah, he goes down a deep pit that he can't get out of, and we're saying he's so into Avodah Zarah that he's going to turn around and thank his getchka more than the guy would do. Well, on the top of Lamed Gimel Lamed Aleph, the Avik Bar, Mahader Adar, Azil, and Maisi would go. Fact, tomorrow, you're telling me that what? Bahalicha, it's mutter, bechazar, it's asr. V'atan Yisrael ha'hoylech l'tarv is bein bahalicha. Should underline this, it clearly says bahalicha. Bein bechazar is asr. So what are you telling me that it's mutter? Amar Vashi, Gitani hi b'Yisrael mumar devade asr. And echanami, if it's Yisrael mumar, there's no shayla that he's going to go to his getchka. But here we're talking about someone who's on the way going off the derech. But avada, we could assume that he'll be chayzer b'tshuva. Tana Rabbanan. It's mutter. B'Yisrael ahoylech liyarid ba'alicha mutter b'chazar also. So Rashi's right away masber this yarid, this shuk, this marketplace. There's no avodah zarah l'chayr going on. This guy is going for what? L'chayr u'da'azul. He's going for business. We're going to see a yid has a different issue. A yid, we saw this in the Gemara. Taisa brings down a fair new base on base. We went through that sugya that going a yid is also to go to the yirid, and if he's going to there, elamai. The Geisha marketplace, correct. A Yid is also to go to this Geisha marketplace, and the reason is, Mar says, did they sell him at the Zarah? It's also for him to go. So why else is he going? Elamai, he's going to sell him at the Zarah. Otherwise, the Gemara is going to say in a moment that if you're here to just sell your regular clothing, your regular stuff, you don't need to run to the Geisha marketplace. You don't do a davar aser unless you have what the benefit. Yeah, you'll sell it over here. Okay. So Tana Abana Ayvik Cham Ha'ilach Lirit. He's going to this Geisha marketplace. Bein ba'alicha bein b'chazar, it's mutter. Yisrael Ha'ilach Yared. Why are you going? So b'halicha we're going to see mutter, but b'chazara also because we're going to say the money that he got, he sold the getchka from it, and that's money that's also b'hano. So zaktimar, frektimar. Ma'ishnei Yisrael b'chazara also. Why? What's the nakuda? Why we saying the Yisrael's also? The Amri we say avodas kachavim zab and he sold getchkas, and this is to me avodas kachavim ika b'hadei, and therefore you can't have enough with it. Frektimar say the same thing with the guy of kachavim nami name avodas kachavim zabin, and to me avodas kachavim ika b'hadei. Ella, what are you going to tell me? There's a chelik. He went to sell his clothing, a cloak, or wine. He's not selling getchkas. The Gemara answer is very simple. The kuda, if he really would have had and he's going to sell only those clothing, he would have sold it here like we saw the Gemara you'd base on a base, especially with Taisus over there on a simple level. It's also to sell in a Geisha marketplace. If you're doing davar iser, elamai, you're probably selling avodah zarah. V'haba'in mutarin. Amr Shem Mishlakish Leishanu L'She'ein Kishurin Zebezeh. And the simple nakuda is when you see people come back as a group, we can assume that they're not done yet. They can always turn around. But people, everyone's individually. When you see, a person's leaving, kaviyachol, a person's leaving, like the Sima Shas. Everyone's leaving. Everyone individually. We assume the event is over. No one's turning around. So Zok Gemara, Ava Kishurin Zebezeh. There still is a group. Asur and Ema Daitelachs. That's what we're discussing. Then we saw some achloikis, the chachamim. Our mayor wants to say it's asur, but chachamim say nechnam ishtiya. There's an akuda if it's mutter b'shtiya, mutter b'ano. Tana Rabbanan. Noidois ha'oivdei kachavim. The halachas of a flask, a leather flask, ha'oivdei kachavim. So there's the gerudim and chadashim. So what is gerudin? And gerudin is a simple level. It's called a sealant. Basically, even today we have it. They sell such things. It's little things that you put in order, not for liquid, not to go through. So in those days, it's very common. They would put what we'll call a pitch in the keli. However, the problem with this pitch is that it's very absorbent and it could get yayin nesach. So the Mishnah tells us, the Gemara tells us very clear that if once you put pitch and you seal it up, then it's a problem because you're absorbing the yayin. However, it's hayagrudim, which means there was no pitch in it, or chadashim. Rashi's mazv here. Chadashim means that the wine, the geisha wine, wasn't in there for a long time. Chadashim doesn't mean a brand new keli that you buy in the store. Rather, chadashim means it was only zman mu'at. When you have wine for a very short period of time, the leather doesn't absorb the asadika wine. See, when you have gerudim and it's chadashim, it's mutar. But once it's yishenim, once it's old, and the hainu, old doesn't mean old, rather it means the wine was there for a very long time. So now it's absorbent, so it retains the flavor of the wine. Or umizaf often, and it has this pitch, so it absorbs the wine, asurit. And we're going to see how you tackle, kasher it up. Oivik echavim, rivon the ibdon. He went and he poured this pitch, and he tanned it. Nice and nice and suchin yain. V'Yisrael oimed al gabav. As long as there's Yisrael over there, ain't a chayshish. Because again, Avodah we're not talking about the guy poured yain nesach. Rather, there's no problem you're going to see in a moment. Ain't a chayshish. What's to help you? Ki Yisrael oimed al gabav my have. He's pouring yain nesach. I'm nothing more answers. No, I'm a papa hachi kamar. Oivik echam ribam the ibdon. V'Yisrael is the one nice and suchin yain. And then you have a mashgiach with the Yisrael. V'Yisrael achayim al gabav ve'ein a chayshish. So tomorrow, I don't understand. Why in the world do I need another yid? There's already a yid there doing everything. Yisrael, Acher, Oimin al-Gaba, Lamali, the more answers. While this yid is getting involved in the process, meanwhile the guy, not behind his back so much, but he sees that the yid is preoccupied, he takes advantage and he's menasech. When there's a mashgiach, another yid, he's making sure that the guy does not play around. Yes, we're talking about the what that the guy put in the yain. Are you going to ask me what in the world? If the guy put in the wine, it's yain nesach. This is what we said earlier on Lambezim and Aleph. That what? Once he's nasik kizarik ma'im latit. That this wine, Zak Rashi, is going leibud. Therefore, the way we look at this wine, it's worthless. It's getting totally eaten up. It's gone. And we don't consider it's b'chlal totally batel. And therefore, it's not considered yain whatsoever. Amr Papi, Shma min there's vid. On that Papi thought to say from Zvid. Hi Avikchav, the Shadacham the Bimilch. If you put on salt, the same halacha would apply. The Yisrael Shari would be also mutter. Maskil Rav Ashi, and there Rav Ashi tells Papi, no, me dummy. Some by the case of what? By the pitch. Ozel leibud. We understand that it disappears. It's nase kizark ma'im letit. However, by the case of salt, lav kizark kibud ozel avad, it's still around. It's still the yain is now 100% completely bottled. Therefore, avad, it would be awesome. Baradi Tayaya Onas Ahanu Zikim Rav Yitzchak ben Yosef. So Baradi, he was an Arab merchant. Tayo always means Yishmael. He went and he grabbed the flask from Yitzchak ben Yosef and Rabbi Chamer. He enjoyed himself a wine, and then he said he thought he was a nice guy, but junior lane, he gave it right back. So also show Bais Medrash Ohr. What is the halacha l'maisa? Came this guy, this Baradi, he's Yishmael, and he used it with wine. Now what? He said halacha l'maisa is as follows. Mimalon mimayim shloshi yamim ma'aron. On a simple level is every 24 hours for 3 days straight, you got to soak it in water and then spill it out, refill it, soak it 3 different times. Mine, you have to empty it out. Avodah doesn't mean 24 hours exactly. On a simple level, you have to wait at least a minimum of 24 hours. Every 24 hours again, you need to do it, empty it out. That's where in our scenario where it was a Kli Yisrael. The Hainu, to get a better understanding, by a Kli Yisrael, well, our Kalim already have, when a person whenever uses a Keli, every time you use it in the beginning, it gets absorbed. So the pores, we could call it, whatever it is, the pores in the Keli, is limited. Therefore, we can understand that we can do this halacha of kasher in it. But to go to take a goyish keli that never had Yiddish wine, even in such a case, since it's full, immediately with goyish wine into the pores, then it'll be usher, law. It wouldn't help to do this mahalach of emptying, filling and emptying the wine with water. The halacha is the what that it's mutter. That's dafka, the case of naidos of a kankanim, which kankanim is what is much more absorbent. That's the problem. Then it wouldn't help. That the halacha is mimar meis leisa works. The nakuda is even something like kankanim that's very absorbent. This we could call like a golas kalim almost. This hechsher, the kasha the kalim would work. Turn around on it. Kankanim shaloiv dekachavim shochadashim ingrudim mutarim. Again, if it's very smooth and there's no pitch, it's mutar and yishanim muzafov and is a sword. Oiv dekachavim. Now comes the guy puts in the noisin the soichen yayin, and then comes the yid Yisrael noisin sechamayim. Like we said 3 different times every 24 hours, etc. You empty the keli. Oiv dekachavim. Or another scenario is noisin sechin yayin. So the halacha is another hector. Instead of putting wine instead of putting solid water to be kashering it, you have another mahalach. Yisrael noisin l'seichon tzir umurias. We discussed the brine umurias with this fish fat. We mentioned how you do this fish fat, etc. with maimu malach. Ve'enoi chayshes. Rashi's masber. Why? Because the tzir, the brine, whether it's brine or whether it's murias, burns out the yayin that was absorbed in the keli. We're having a shiloh on Lamagimel base. Is it like Athila Di'evid? Is it better to use the water? It's a very long process. Or maybe you rather just use the tzir or murias for whatever reason you have it on, you want to just do it like Athila. Tashman, the Tanim, if they're brand new, nice and second yain. But the Yeshanim, nice and second tzir or murias, and on the next word, like Athila. So it's very clear that like Athila, it's not a problem. You throw it into the fire, and on a simple level, even today, what we do for our Gos Kalim, you put it into very hot fire. It doesn't work or not. Amalei, I don't understand. Seriously, if Malach, we just said a moment ago, that brine helps it enough. Arle Kol Shekain, so what's the Havamina? It's Menami Rabbi Yechanan V'Amilos. I want to say Amar Vasi Rabbi Yechanan Kankanim. Shaloi de Kacham Shechzin Lekivshin Eish. Once you put it into this very powerful, strong fire, Kivon. Once the pitch, basically the lining, starts falling off the keli, even when its refined merpot starts loosening up, the halacha is that what? It's considered a good hagalas kelim and it's mutter to use. What is the halacha kinsa? Kinsa is what? Wooden chips. Chad aser v'chad shari v'hilchas command aser. Rashi's masber, the nakuda is when you put in these wooden chips and the pitch is inside the keli. So he's saying that the source of the heat is so close to the pitch, so Avodah is going to fall off. So it's not a raya. Zok Taisus lefida cheshbon of Rashi comes out. Zok Taisus umashal perusha kim hayim asik lefnim ad. If it would be so powerful, these wooden chips so strong, it would fall off. Then Avodah would be mutter if Rashi's cheshbon. The whole nekuda is that the source of the heat is very close to the pitch. The pitch is going to fall off the keli. But Zok Taisus Avodah, if the pitch, the wooden chips retain such a heat that it's enough that even the outside of the keli, element went through the entire keli. Therefore, it's considered a full hechsher. It's a kashin up the keli would be mutter. What is the halach of beer? Rashi says the beer, the shachar mevatel l'tami the chamer. It's actually strong enough. Beer also has the components powerful enough to knock off the wine. So I'm not going to review the Asri Rava was matashar. Vino shorli Rav Chia bar Rabbi Yitzchak. Lemember beishikra to put into what? Into place into the keli. Beer. Lemaisei made a toast. Also ram bechamra. They said no, it was a mistake. He's human. Lemaisei leichashel lemilsa amakroi ba'amu just akroi, and therefore there's no reason to say that beer should be a problem otu yai. Rav Yitzchak bar Bisna havlehanu monei de puskana. He had these kalim of what? That they used the tzoy of the animal, tzafike bakar, and there was yain nesach in there. Melinu maya, and he put some water, instead of doing the regular water and then flipping it out every 3 days, he put it in the sun. He figured the sun's going to heat up the water, it'll make it much more hechsher, make it much more powerful. And echina b'shem shabapaku, burst it from the heat, etc. What were you thinking? There was no reason to do this, and instead you ruined your entire keli because everything broke. They never said put in the sun. They just said you got to put in water, wait 24 hours, and do it the process 3 times. Which we're going to see in a moment. What is a kli neser? But Rashi is very clear that kli neser is very powerful, and the nekuda that it's very absorbent. That what? Zok Rashi, kli neser is a problem b'shum debli tuva. It's very absorbent. So therefore what? Ein l'tayr lamas. My kli neser, Rav Yisrael Barabin, it's a kli machbayr shel tzarif. Tzarif, they bring down a balaz's alum. Basically, it's a very strong material that's very absorbent from alamine. Therefore, it's a problem. Dvei Barzo, he was a person, he was Zok Raifila, he was the Sheni LaMelech, and Anas Hanu Kubim Padisa, when he took these jugs away from the people from Disa. Ravu Chamra, and he puts in his wine. After he's done, he says, take it back, I don't need it anymore. Asu Shailil Rav Yehuda, if it's mutter not, Amadava Shein Machnisa Lekiyamu. Since Lamaisa, he only used it for a very short time, the halach is Mishashcham B'mayim, it's not a problem, just rinse it in water, Vein Mutarin, and it's permitted. You have these red pitchers, they're moik, even the leibali tuf, again, the same nakuda. If something's not very absorbent, you rinse it out. Pasva says a kelim made from cheres, the bei mechas, from a place, given the lebalatura, again, mishashcham b'mayim umutarit. Kasi, what is the halacha of cups from these kli cheres? Abasi aser, abashi shari. Why? That it's not a problem, is no, it was never really below, it was never really absorbent, and it's fine, the aser. Ki pligi, when are they arguing with pam sheni? That's where the shaylik and I'm pam rishon misheni kulam alay pligi, that what the aser. Why? Because it's bleed the first time. Ki pligi v'pam gimel v'helchas alamaisa, if pam rishon, even v'sheni is aser, however the gimel is mutter. Amar zvit, hani mani the kunya, either it's glaze from lead, Tosfos wants to say it may actually mean some glass. So if it's chivra v'uchma, if it's black and white, shari. But if it's yeruka always means yark, always means yellowish, unless it says yark ekarsi, then it's more like green. So you have this yellowish color, it's aser. Why? Mishum, the mitzvah, like we just said earlier, the mitzvah is, the Nakuda Rashi said it's this alamon, it's very absorbent. But everyone agrees, once this cracks, then the yain goes into the cracks, and again, kula asiri. Darash mareimar kunya. Again, this kunya with this glass, or Rashi says the lead. Bein ochma, bein chivra, bein yeruka, whether black, white, green, yellow, shari, it's permitted. In fact, the Gemara, Yitami Rima says it's always permitted. Ma'ishna mechametz bepesach. What's the difference? Chametz pesach. The Bami name Ramim and asked the shalos follows. Hani money the kunya malish damshu bepescha. So he said he answered like that. Yeruka, this yellowish that what? There's no question about it. Has this aluminum in it, ubali vasiri, and there's a problem of chametz in it. Kiti bailach, the whole shell would be in the black and white. Chivri v'uchmimai, and he's moisef. Kiyis b'kutufani, again, if it has these cracks, there's no shayla chametz when it did. Leiti bailach the v'ali vasiri. The only shayla is when it's smooth. Kiti bailach the sheimai, and Amar when lamadown and aleph. Amalu anachazinu l'demaisi looks at the keli, says, I see on a little level. Rashi says it's mezin. It's sweating through and through. But even the maisi, if it's sweating through and through the whole entire keli, there's no shayla about it. Then there's no question that the whole keli is fully absorbent, and there's a problem of chametz in the keli, and therefore it's a problem. So my time, we all know how could you kasher kli cheres? The only way to kasher is what? Is to break it. You got to break it. The chsev you shaver. The handler tahayra zok Rashi elo shvira, and you have no choice to break it. So this is the question. Frektik mars v'alos amar meimar. Mai shnami yain nesach. Why is it different than yain nesach darshul amar meimar? Kulu mani de kunyashari. By the sugya of yain nesach, there Meimar wants to say it's permitted. When he goes into the sugya chametz, the pesach with the kelim, he says it's aser. The darshul meimar kulu mani de kunyashari. V'chitim, you're going to tell me, tell you the chiluk. Chametz is a shayla of daraisa, but yain nesach, which is on the abanan who, that's Zak Damar, it's not going to help. But call the takar abanan came the daraisa takar. On that Zak Damar, you can't compare chametz with what? With the case of yain nesach. Why? Because zel tashmish b'chamin. The whole problem of chametz is when you cook it, and you cook something very hot, there's no shayla that it gets absorbed into your kelim much more powerful. Over here we're talking about what? Wine. Wine is zel tashmish b'tzainin. So since it's b'tzainin, there's no shayla we can say that what on a simple level it's not going to be as absorbent as chametz. So you can't ask us why is it different chametz in a keli tiyai. Rebbe Akiva, there's a big shayla. If you look at the Likutei Rashi, they bring down over here, Avodah doesn't mean Rebbe Akiva, it's Mar Ukva, Ikla, Laginza, it can't be Rebbe Akiva, he wouldn't have such a shayla. Tosfos himself quotes this Rashi, he says, Pirush Rashi, Ber Kama, the Tainus, the Gars, Mar Ukva, the Chas, Risholem, Zok Tosfos. Sure, Rebbe Akiva, like Mustab, he's really quoting the Rashi, that they bring down over here in the Likutei, that it's Tainus Yid Aleph from a base. But the simple, where we're going to go with Rebbe Akiva. Rebbe Akiva, Ikla, Laginzak, he goes to his place to visit. Ikla, Laginzak, Ginzak's a place, Shem Malkoy. They asked him a few shilas, which we're going to see. Misana l'shois or ein misana l'shois. So there's big shilah misana l'shois. Now Rashi right away says regarding misana l'shois, it has to be the Moshe right now. It's 10:30 come out, and a person didn't eat yet. It has to be they didn't eat, and now a person wants to be makabel a tainus, a big nafkamino. Could he look back and say that the tainus is going to start l'shois, or maybe l'maisa there's no such thing l'shois? It has to be a complete yoin. But Rashi says Avodah has to be that he didn't eat, because once you ate, there's no shiloh. If a person says a tainus for a half hour, it's not called a tainus. The whole point of a tainus is tsar. So it has to be you didn't eat already for 5 hours. Now you say I want to do the tainus to the rest of the day. So there, do we look at it as a full tainus or not? It's a big shiloh. The etzim we all know, tainus l'shois. There's no such thing as bechlal a neder, unless it's a chetzah. So what's the chetzah? There's no chetzah of abstaining something from not eating. But then we have a whole concept of nidrei mitzvah. That's why it has to be a shiloh of tainus l'shois. Needs to be, is it a real tainus? Otherwise you have a problem that it's not an isser chetzah and it wouldn't be considered a neder. It's a big nafkamina. Is it a neder or not? So again, do we look at it as the halacha of a nidre mitzvah or not. So Zok Gemara, this was one shayla, Misan l'shoyis, Aim Misan l'shoyis, lehava biyadei. Again, Mar Ukva or Vakiva, he didn't have the answer. Another shayla he had, Kan Kanav Shoyed Chavim, that's where Bechlam mentioned in this whole Gemara. Asur Nemitar, lehava biyadei. Another shayla he had, B'meshimish Moshe kol shivas amei meluim. He didn't know what the Moshe Rabbeinu wore. He didn't wear the kahuna, Zok Rashi, that belonged to Aaron Achicha. Couldn't have been Moshe wore it. So what did he wear? Also, Shalbei Midrash Army, they said as follows: Hilchasam Misan l'shoyis. It's taka good tainus and it's a neder. V'im hishlim ispal tfilas tainus. To answer the first question, the Hilchasa kankanim shalayv de kachavim la'achar yu beis chadashim. We're going to find this throughout the next Amud, the concept of 12 months. After 12 months, it's all mutter mutarin. And the third, b'mashimish Moshe shivas amei meluim was b'chalak lovan. Was with the white chaluk and Rav Kahana masni b'chalak lovan. Shein ba'imra didn't have a hem. Zok Rashi, yesh oimer, that in order that he worked, so people shouldn't think that he stole. Zok Rashi can be b'chal al milsi. He was ready. The malacha was ready. What the shaila was that they stole the stuff. The trumas hamishkan, it was already built, so there's nothing to steal. So therefore, it's hard to say that's why he had this clothing without the hem. Hachatzanim, we learned about these grape seeds and the peels. V'azagim shalayv dekacham, we saw v'chulitz and mechlekes. Rameir wants to say it's completely usher. Chachamim wants to say it's mutter. V'hano. Tana Rabbanan, we're going to show us a brayso like shitas chachamim. Lachin, it depends. If it's lachin, if it's moisture, then asurin, yeveshim, mutarim, because we saw this already when we learned that earlier. Shitas chachamim on a simple level as he holds, once you have these grapes, after 12 months it's dry, he considers it no different than wood. Therefore it's mutter. Zaktamar, hainu lachin, hainu yeveshim. When we're talking about these chatzanim, these grapes, and the peels and the seeds, call you beis chaydish. But yeveshem, when is it considered dry? Lachir beis chaydish. Itmar. Asur. We're talking about these chatzanim. When it's also asur nafilu bano, it goes extreme. But we can say mutarin nafilu ba'achila. Amar Zvit. Hi durdiya the chamra. Durdiya on a simple level means the sediment. The aramoi. Zok pirish shmarim shalayv chavim shmarim. The halacha is Basa Tracy Archi Shat after 12 months again Shari. Amram Chaviva the Rava Hani Gofi. You have these jugs that have yain nesach in it. Again Basar Tracy Archi Shaita. It's Shari. Amram Chaviva Hani. One lamadal on the base top of the helmet. Avodah the Tai. Rashi says it's a certain type of like a leather canteen that they would schlep with it. It was very big. It was very thick. Basa Tracy Archi Shaita after 12 months Shari. Amram Achmed Avika. Hani Purtsni, what's Purtsni? It's Psailis Shel Anovin Deramoi, again, Basa Tracy, Archi Shaita Shari. Amar Vachmed Rava, Hani Golfi. Talking about these jugs, when it's Shchimi, Vochmi, when it's red and black, Basa Tracy, Archi Shaita after 12 months, again, it has the same halach of Shari. Zaha Morios, we spoke extensively regarding this Morios. Morios is fish fat, the way they made the dips. You have to remember the problem with this fish fat. The Nakuda is that if you flip it with wine, that was the problem. The person might say, you know what? I want to add wine in it and yayin nesech, and it's a problem. So we learned that it depends. The fish fat is very fascinating. The Rashi says the lashon mekalko. Rashi says regarding this fish fat, and when they basically put it in, the first 2 times in the process, it would have so much fat that actually wine would ruin it. The Gemara doesn't say. The Gemara says light sarich. They bring down in the guys. The Rashi comes out. It's worse than that's actually mekalko the fat. Well, that's makalka, you don't need it, but the nakuda is when there's so much fish fat, we're not worried that this guy is going to switch it to wine. However, eventually you have what to worry about, that they're going to take this fish fat, it's very shvach, so you add yain nesach in it. So let's see, Tana Rabbanan, Morius if it's the Uman. Uman, the nakuda is very crucial. The nakuda is Uman cares about his reputation. Therefore, on a simple level, it's mutter. And therefore, it's going to be a problem. It's going to be permitted. What is this? Chilak. Chilak is a certain type of fish. It's actually, we learned about this, it's actually a kosher dika fish. It's called sultanis. And the nakuda is, it doesn't have the fins and scales yet. So we have a problem. Maybe a guy's going to flip it. We're saying, but again, if you're an uman, the nakuda is, you have your reputation and you're not going to lose it for a few dollars. Chilak uman mutter. Tani v'im the revo, murius uman mutter. Who Tani v'am depends. Pam, risha mesheni mutter. Like we just explained, there's so much fish fat. There's no reason to change it for yayin. But once you dilute it the third time around, shlishi, then already it's awesome. My time because parisha masheni did not fish nayu. It's so much fat. Loit sarach, you're not going to switch it for the yayin. Again, Rashi says makalkal. But loit sarach lememru b'chemra, you don't need to put wine. Mikamelech ram v'chamra, we're worried they're going to put in wine, and therefore, on a simple level, it's us. Halu arva. We're talking about a ship that was full of demuriyasa. The Asir Lenimila, the Akka pulls up to the port of Akkay. Oiser Rabbi Abadam and Akka, the Turba, they put on a Scheiner. Like that, no one should come and switch it for wine. I don't understand. The man not wherever they got it from, you have nothing to worry about. Only when they pull up the Akkay, you have what to worry about, that they're going to switch it for wine. What's the word? You're going to tell me they what? That they might have put in wine? It doesn't make sense. Kista. The Morius Beluma, these are measurements, these are currency, but the Nakuda is, Morius cost $1, let's say, cost a zuz. Luma's a zuz. Kista the Chamra Bedalumi. Where it came from, wine was a quarter of the price of what the Morius, so there's no Havamina. The wine was 4 times more pricey than what? Than the Morius, so there's no Havamina. You're going to put in wine for the Morius. You're not crazy. So I did the Tzur. Maybe he passed through Tzur. And Tzur, there was equal. Again, Ikula for sure. Someone I say we're talking about Dafka specifically in the spring. It was a time when the ship came in, but when you're looking at the port of Tzur, it wasn't possible for ships to go there because there was too much water, there was whirlpools, etc. But about all year round, it wasn't that it was never possible to boat the Tzur. You find many Gemaras that talk about the port of Tzur. And in a simple Nakuda, we're talking about the Zman that this Maisa was, it wasn't possible to pull up to the port. The Gvinas, Bais, Unyaki, again we saw the Machlaikis, the Nyaki, it's a Shem in place, but this Gvina, Chachamim was matir bano. Amar Shem Shlakish b'nei Ma'asru Gvinas Unyaki, Mnei Sheroiv, we're talking about Shitas Ramir, Mipnei Sheroiv, Agolim Shalai Seir, Nishchatin Lavoidis Kachavim, and again we're discussing the cheese, the way they would curdle it, and the rennet, we said it's the fourth stomach. We're going to talk about it right now, let's see this. My area for tomorrow, why do you have to come in to say that what? Roy Golem has a problem with the Zarah Golem. Afilu miat nami. You should say even the meat of that Golem go for the Zarah. Why? Daramer Shitas Rameir is Chai Shmuta, and here we're discussing Shitas Rameir. Zok tomorrow as follows: Amris Roiv Ika Miat Eliamad Miat Kivan Ika Reva Golem the Ein Shchat Lavoidis Kechavim the Ika Nam Sharba Amos the Ein Shchat Lavoidis Kechavim have Lemuta Lemuta Umuta Lemuta LeChai Shmuta. So on a simple level, where's Shitas Rameir that's Chai Shmuta? Rashi brings down. We all know it's the Gemara Nivamis. That what is the halacha of a katan and ktana? Could they do yibam or not? Rameir's mechadish, a very small statistics. The chance of it happening is so small, but he's still chaysh remit. That what he says the katan can do yibam, maybe he's going to be a saris. And most people agree that saris is very shchiach. And the Rishonim Amaz ba'adarab Rameir's miyat has nothing to do with what? Has nothing to do with statistics, because it says miyut l'mut lechashinon. So miyut l'mut has nothing to do that it changes the chances. Rather, miyut l'mut in a simple level is we find this very common by the scenario of ksubis with the isha that's p'chusim bas gimel. The nekuda of svek sveika. Same thing over here. The Rameir is going to say by svek sveika miyut l'muta that Rameir is loichayish, but one miyut. Therefore, in our nekuda for our gemara, we're talking about since roiva golem is going on Avodah Zarah, but if it would only be a miyut, then you have two miyutim. First of all, maybe Bechlal it wasn't from egos, from other behemoths that have nothing to do with Zarah. The imtim saloimos egel, even in the egel is a miyut. Therefore, it's a miyut the muta. That's why Rameir had to say that it's the roiva golem. Therefore, you have one miyut, and Rameir's chayshish for a miyut. You're the one who says it's permitted. And again, we're thinking that you're not shechting, the person's not shechting the animal for Avodah Zarah, but it's how he needs to do like a Maisa Pigo. Same type of concept. He wants the dam for Avodah Zarah. Or lahakter chabal Avodah Zarah. It's a machlekes. Why? Just like the regular avodah, pikul kasav machashim avodah avodah, v'alfin and chutz b'mifnim. Chutz over here means there's nothing to do with the Bais Medrash. But we're going to learn a chutz b'mifnim, and same, just like b'mifnim, we have the concept of pikul. So too over here, Reb Shimon Shalakasham mutaris. He answers back, no. Tarminach shaitach. Maybe next time you'll have better luck. Right now it's not your mazel. What do you say? I'm not sure he said, okay. Rabbi Yechina Amar Surah, why you do learn out, that's what you're saying, you're learning out from Avodah, because of Chutz L'Pnim, right? So and then he answers back, no, there's no Raya, we're talking about over there, the Yitaka thought, Yitaka had you machshava for Avodah Zarah, Mamish, there, Avodah, I agree, in such a case, it's considered Avodah, and it's us. Amar Yehuda, Shor Rabbi Shmuel, Amar Rav Chtavuya, Marav HaMekadesh, Beferish. Someone who's mekadesh isha with the waist of an animal. So shar nisko, if it's from a shar nisko this waist, it's mukadeshes. But beferish ayegla avodas chavim ain't mukadeshes. So what's the nafkamina? Why would it be different by shor niskol to what? To avoid the Zarah. You're happy that what? That it's fat. So on a simple level, this is a shayla. How do we look at the waist inside an animal? Is that a cheluk of the animal? Or it's a distinct entity that has nothing to do with the animal? So therefore, for example, over here, the behema is a shor niskol. We don't look at the waist as a shor niskol. It's a separate chayfetz b'chal. It's a separate entity. So it depends. If you care about it, then you can say it's a cheluk of the animal. So gable egli avoid this kachavim, where you're happy that it's fast and it's fat with the waist included. Since you don't care, we look at it as a separate entity, and therefore you could be makadosh isha as long as this what? It shove a pruta. Even a muma, anything. First, it's waist mutaris. Amarava, Tarvaitanin. We find both these concepts in our Mishnah. Let's go through it. What was the whole back and forth shak v'tayir? And he answered back, which we all know, which is more chamur, and we saw earlier that as long as the kohen is not nauseous from it, sharfa, he could go up and down row, we said. Mechlau, make a diak, or on the top of Lamed Hamad Alf, the Isurai no, sharpa shai, you clearly see from Isurai no, it's mutter the waist. With the Carmelite, what was his answer back? In Cain, if so, why is it not Asa Bano? Mechlau, you clearly see that Chavim Asa Pershayu. Dr. Mara, I don't understand, but why didn't he answer him? Regarding this rennet that we're talking about, this keva, you don't see it though. Morios, we find the concept by Morios Labban Lesur Bana. My taimo, what's that? The Morios is mutter, Lamashum de Lesur Lesur. So say the same thing by the cheese. What's the difference? The more answers. Hacha. Keeping the ukmika maikim. How over here? How is the cheese made? You know how it's made. In a chama you don't see it, but you understand that the whole process, the way it's made, when something's so obvious that the process needs to have this, again, this rennet to make the cheese, it's considered something like we see it, and therefore it's us. We saw in the Mishnah, Hisil Davar Acher v'chulei. The Yehuda starts questioning him with what? With the psukim of Shir Hashirim Kitayvim De'dayich Kitayvim De'decha. So what was the back and forth? This is what Yehuda was telling Amr Knesset Yisrael V'Ekadosh Baruch Hu B'nei Shalayla. That I rave him here means the Chachamim Allah Divrei Dedecha Yoser Miyena Shel Torah. This is what Yehuda is trying to tell him. He's answering him back. Well, how do you look at the pasuk of what of Shir Hashirim that the Rabbanan, the Gzeira that the Chachamim are making over here is more chashuv than what? Than even the Araises, which this is what he's basically telling him. However, why is it sealed Davar Acher? If he's answering that it's the Rabbanan, the answer is a sealed Davar Acher. He didn't tell him what is Takab Shad of the Gzeira, which we're going to see in a moment why he didn't do that. But he's basically hinting from the pasuk that it's a Rabbanan. So Zotamar, Maishna, High Kodesh Ali, there's plenty of other psukim that even say more explicitly than a kuda of Derabanan. Amar Shem Pazi, Vitem Shem Amishmer Reisha, the Krok Amalei. Yesha Kain, like it says in the beginning of the pasuk, Yesha Kain in Nishkais Piu, Amalei Shmal, Achi! Chashik Spasecha Zubazu, Valtaval Hashiv. Don't question what we're saying this Gzeira. Zotamar, why not? My time, Amula Vitem Shmal Rabba, because it was a Gzeira Chadashi. Whenever, even today, when the yeshiva etc. wants to make a new rule, they don't want to talk, they don't want to explain, because then people start fighting it. First established the Gzeira. Once it's established, a year later, when someone wants to teach and say it was krum, it's not going to undermine the entire Gzeira. So what was the Gzeira? My Gzeira, Ta'amishim Pasim, Rishum Mishlakash, Rishum Naker. We're chayshish of Gila with the snake bite, the Nachash. Again, it'll go into the cheese. So why didn't he just tell him? Because the problem of a snake. More answers whenever they made a gzeira, they would wait a minimum of 12 months before they explain the reasoning. Why? You always have the guy that doesn't believe in it, he starts undermining it. Therefore, by not saying why, no one could question it. However, Rav Yirmi had a problem. Tell me the problem of the Gzeira was the snake bite. If so, we learned already the concept that the venom has a side effect. It doesn't let the cheese curdle. It doesn't let the wine come into wine. We're talking about the venom of the snake. The side effect is that it doesn't make it turn into wine, or it doesn't make cheese. So just look, Amar Chanina, you know why? It can be stuck. The whole process of the cheese with the way, the curdle, how they made the entire cheese, it's very possible. In a chanami, it turns into cheese. We can have little pieces of what that has eres, that has poison in it, and that's the problem. There's a different problem. The R, you ate, that want to say the Avodah is also. So we make a deal. Okay, but the rennet itself, this entire stomach, we're talking about this fourth stomach. You tell me Gufa Shire comes out. There's a Mishnah Chulin that says Kevas over here clearly says the rennet itself. So we clearly see Shita Shmuel is the what? That the Keva itself is Aser. So what in the world are you telling me that the R Kevas Nevela is Aser, but the Keva itself is Mutter? You have a Mefesh Gemara, a Mishnah Chulin. On that, my answer is like Kasha. One Lamed Hayam Bais. Kan Kaidim Chazar. Where the Mishnah and Shchita that we're talking about the Mishnah and Chulin, where it talks about that the Kevas Aser and Echnamis. This is before the whole Shakavitar to ensure that it was Chayzer. On that Avodah we're saying that the what the Nakuda is that's Aser. We can where we're talking about over here. Dafka the R is Aser, but the Kevas Mutter is La'acher Chazara. There it's ready when Shmuel answered the whole Nakuda, the whole Shakavitar. Would Yeshua agree to Shmuel's tshuva? On that he agreed and he said yes about it's Mutter Mishnah. However, the Mishnah in Chulin, where it says that Shmuel says that the cave is also like Zazim and Kaima, we find that many times once there's a Mishnah it stays, even though in a Chanami, Avodah, he was Chayzer, and he says that Be'etzim, the cave itself is permitted. The reason why this Gvino is also Neshmachlikin Paneh B'Shuman Chazir. They basically butter it up with lark, with Chazir, but the point is, it has mamish treif on it. Rav Chizdam Neshmamid and Isav Chaimitz. They put it in wine. You're talking about the Chaimitz vinegar into the Gvino, into the cheese. And again, we learned already Chaimitz is the same issue as wine. Rav Nachman Yitzchak Amab Neshmamid and Isav B'Sraf Arlo. With the sap of Arlo, we all know Arlo is also the first 3 years. Why? Because we consider the sap no different like the pears. Neshu peri, and pear is a problem of Arlo. And that's like the Marafilu, Tim Rabbi Shua, and the whole machlokes of Rabbi Shua regarding the Arlo, Adkan like Pelag Shua, Dafka, Bekatva the Guza, which is talking about like the resting word there. There's a big Shiloh, Leo wants to say it's a peri. And that, we're saying Rabbi Shua over there argues and it's not considered a peri. Avo, Bekatva the peri. However, over here we're talking about the sap of the pears. Mighty there, Rabbi Shua is going to be mighty that's considered pears. We're talking about someone who makes this cheese, Besraf Ahalin. We're talking about the saps of Besraf Ikon, whether it's the leaves or whether it's the roots, mutter. Besraf Hapagin, however you do with these figs that are unripe, also, why? Neshu Peri. So, Frek Demar, a very simple question. Bechlal. Bein L'Rav Chizda, whether you tell me it's Chaimitz, whether it's Arlo, Bein L'Rav Nachman, Anon Bar Yitzchak, Titzahaz Bar No. What's the L'Chayra? If you have a problem of Chaimitz and you have a problem of what of Arlo, why is there a problem? Why is there not a problem of no? And that the Gemara answers, Ein Echanami 100%, Ein Echanami, Kasha, it's Takashver. Darash, Reb Nachman Bered of Chizda Maidich said, what is the pasuk saying? Le'reach shmanecha toivim. That what? Lamata machachem daimel etzlei cheshel platein. We're talking about like a flask of what? Of balsam oil. Migula reicha noidif. Mechusa in reicha noidif. It's almost like what today what we have with these scents that you turn it and you open it up and you let the smell come out. Then of others migula. But it's mechusa in reicha noidif. V'loyel dvarim shemechusa man and stuff that we never understood till now. Misgal and let they get revealed to him. Why? Shenamah, like it says in the pasuk, at the end of the pasuk over there, Alamais literally means the maidens. Ahevucha, they'll love you. But we read it, creepy, Alumais, lashon hidden. V'loyed shemalach hamavis, ayva, shenamah alamais, eyavucha. Karibe, you read it, Amavis, you're able to overpower the malach hamavis. V'loyed shenoich shnei alamas, echad aylam azeh. V'echad aylam abba shenamah. Again, we're reading that alamais, a lashon what? Plural, creepy, alumais, bein aylam azeh. Bein Oilam Abba. One the Mishnah of Lamed Hayam and Bais Veilu Dvarim Shalayv de Kachavim Masurin. However, Vein Asur and Isur no, we spoke extensively throughout the Masechta. What's us about no? Here we're saying this Dvarim it's Dafka Asur. For example, again we know Chalav Stam. Chalav Shechavayv de Kachavim. First of all, the milk. Vein Yisrael Reyu. The Pas. We're going to see the problem with Pas because of Chasnos. The Hashem and Shalain and the oils. However, Rabbi Beis Dina Yitiru Hashem, which we're going to discuss. Vashlokoi, simple love means cooked foods. V'chvashin shedakan lasin l'sechin yaim v'chaim, preserved foods that what you put in wine and vinegar. V'toris is a certain type of fish. It's a mindaghu. We spoke about it. This is the sultanas that we said earlier. However, v'taras trufa, when you mince it, that's where it's a problem, because then you can't really tell anymore. V'tzir, when you have this brine, she'emba daga klavis. Daga klavis is actually very fascinating. It grows on its own. Dafka, when you have this, it's actually saying that be'etzim itself, this klavis is usher, it's tummy, but it needs to have it when it has this fish that's tar, it will grow in there. And if you don't see it, it becomes a suffix. The kort shel is a very sharp plant, and the problem with the knife, just like an onion today, mamash today's kashers, you have a problem with an onion when you cut it with a knife. Umelech salkundis. The Gemara is going to explain this. Harei isurin ve'ein isuron isur hano. So zok the Gemara chalav. Let's go through the first case. Chalav. Chalav l'may nechashla. Imashu mechlufei. What? You're worried you're going to exchange it? Zok the Gemara. What do you mean? Tar ichlufei. What? You're going to tell me you're going to change it? Tar chibatami yarik. He says, what do you mean? The tar, the milk, was actually even today was white. However, their milk was yellowish. Today, I think it's a whole different thing. They have way technology today, but the milks, I think you can make milk from many treif animals. But in those days, the Mishnah's time, the milk on a simple level was all kosher batsim. There was no problem, it was white. However, it was told to be yellow, so look at the color. You're going to tell me that what? That you mixed it, nakum. You could check by what? Check by curdling. Again, making cheese. Cheese was always coming from milk that was tar. You can't make cheese from chalav tami. Mar answers, you're right. In the kabayla gvina, if you want to make cheese a chanami. However, the kabayla lekamcha. You want to make some type of dip, some dairy dip. So tomorrow, what do you mean? Okay, I get it. You're making this dairy dip. So take a sample. V'nishkum in kali. Take a little and test it. V'nekum. My answer is there's a different problem. Kivin dibitar nami ika nisyuve. Nisyuve is like the way they made the cheese. W-H-E-Y. The loy kayami that the what that didn't curdle. Like the make a lot. Most there's no way to really check. But same I feel temo. The kabbalah gvina ika the kai bene itfi. Again, there's always problems that some remain in the holes. In a very simple level, the gvina is not 100% bulletproof. It's not 100% processed. You know for a fact there's not going to be any issues of tamadik chalav and tamadik cheeses, etc. The pas, so that's where Shem is also. What about pas? Amar Rav Kahana, Rav Yechanan, pas, loyhut to be pesed. Michla, oh, sounds like the Ikam the Shari. Mar says, and the Chiyatzer of the Imam Pama Achas Yatzer Rebbe L'Sada. He wants them pulls up the field, they have become the fun of pas. Purni. Pas purni is like today, it's almost like you could picture like a pizza oven that has a big drawer, you open it up, and in those days, this typical thing had, if you look at the tziyurim on a simple level, in the Babas, we find that the ovens were like pots, like a stove. Had room to put two pots in it, and it had a little door compartment on the bottom. We're talking about this massive oven, like mamish, like today when you go to the pizza shop, those massive ovens. You open the drawer, so it's a massive pizza oven. Ma'afasah was a massive loaf of bread. It was the size of 144 eggs. Oh, Rabbi Kamino Pazu, look how beautiful this bread is. Ma'roch cham la'isra. So tomorrow, what do you mean ma'roch chamim? Mishum chasnus. There's a problem with chasnus. You'll intermarry with these girls. They make the bread, and you start going to them. Before you know it, you marry them. Why did you do the Psada? Kisvur Maham. So they understood that what? Kisvur Maham, that hit the Rabbi a pass. Velohi, Ravad, the Rabbi lo hit this a pass. Rabbi Yosef, someone said, Vitim Rishmo, Biyudam, Aloi Kachaya Maisis, now what happened? Amru, Pam, Achas, Alach, Rabbi, the Makam Echot. He pulls up this place for a pass, Dochuk, Letamid, and the Maisis, no one really had bread. And Amru Rabbi says, I don't understand, Income Palta, there's no baker over here. Kisvur, Amru Laima Palta, B'chavit. They understood the Rebbe was saying, what do you mean there should be a Gosha baker to make the bread? What was he talking about? Palta Yisrael. Dafko Jewish baker, but if other Gosha baker never had it to be matter. It's a little faster. Reb was saying something that's not really relevant, because we just said a moment ago from Rebbe that even a Gosha baker is usher. But he says, Loy, I'm going to do like a Palta Yisrael. Avo b'malkom de'ika Palta Yisrael, Loy. For Rabbi Yechanan's Moisef, if on the Amar, the Palta of Chachamim, that's Dafka, immediately what? Besada. Avo be'ir is a different problem. Loy mishum what? Mishum chasnus. Again, at a simple level, especially pas was very common to make. They would do it was daily. Therefore, again, you would be chayshish that they would go, especially the girls would make it, and they would end up in a relationship, and we have a problem of chashash of intermarriage. Ayivu havim menaches. He would bite v'achol pas abe mitzri. He would eat it over the borders besado itzel mitzar. It was like borderline, the borders in the ear. Don't speak to him. Why? This person eats the bread the Armoy. So that was the pasta sauce. On to the next one. The oil. Shemen. Rav wants to say Amar Daniel was actually Gazer Olav. It already came from Daniel. V'Shmuel Amar, no, there's a different issue. Well, Lamed Vav Amar Aleph. Zelifason shel Kalim Tmeim. Basically, the symbol of means the emissions that come out from these Kalim Tmeim. That's the problem I sartan. Zoktamar Atukul Ama Eichel Tires. No, Levai that everyone should be so makbeti tires, but it's not the reality. So why Dafka Shemen did we make it such a problem? Ella wasn't Kalim Tmeim. Ella Zelifason shel Kalim Asurim. Not Tmeim. Rather read it as Surin. Sartan, that's the problem. I mean that I said that what? Zilifos and Shokalim Asurim Sartan, the whole problem was that what? The Zilifos and the emissions. How do we can understand the Chiyas Rabbi Yitzchak Shmuel Bar Marta? The Amar. There's some loy ben Etzivin, the Shemen, Rabbi Yehuda Besdin and Nimno Allah V'Tiru, Kasavar, because it's a big Shiloh of nice and tam, Lipgam, mutter or not. There's a big machlekes, nice and tam, Lipgam is mutter or not. Then we can understand this whole Nakuda of nice and Lipgam. However, because that's halacha. You told me it's like zero. Daniel Gazer 11, it's not halacha. Daniel Gazer, Basar Yehuda Nasim Mivatale, that can be. Vatnan, Ein Bezdin Yochel Avatal, different Bezdin Chaveroi, Ela Imkin Gadol Menem Chacham Minyan. And there's no Shiloh that Daniel was much more Gadol Menem, he was much earlier. Amalei, on that, Rav tells us Shmuel knows him lie. He comes from Ludai, he comes from Loi Kamer, Scheiner Ludai, the Mezalzalu. Amalei Ashachle, you want me to tell this to him? Rav, so Rav came very embarrassed. Ichsif, Rav was very embarrassed. Amar Rav, him loy darshu, anan loy darshina. We shouldn't be darsh. It says in the pasuk, Vayasim Daniel aliboy, asher is goel bepas begag hamelech ubeyain mishtav. In a simple level, Daniel he didn't defile with the pas or what? Ubeyain over here the lashon is mishtav. Mishtav is a lashon plural. The what? Mishtav mishtav is a cousin of the achas mishtayain. The achas mishtashemet. So what's the machlekes? Rav Sava Liboy. Know what he wants to say? Dafka Liboy Shavah L'Chol Yisrael. However, L'Chol Yisrael Hayre. V'Shmuel Sava Liboy Sham L'Chol Yisrael Loy Hayre. So the whole machlekes Rav Shmuel is regarding Klal Yisrael. So tomorrow, V'Shem and Daniel is the taka true that Daniel was geyser. V'Amar Bali Amar Avim and Tamish Rav. That the pita and the bread, V'Shem and the oils, and Yain and the wine, Uben is saying, we're going to talk about this. Kulon Mishmaina Asa Davain. The Nekuda Shmaina Asa. It's not really so much our sugya. It's more in the beginning of Shabbos. The Nekuda Shmaina Asa that we know that the Talmidei Beis Shammai and the Talmidei Beis Hillel they went to Chananya ben Chizki ben Garin. And the Ma'aseh Talmidei Beis Shammai was much more. There were many more over there, and they were able to put in 18 halachas. They were able to overpower the against Talmidei Beis Hillel. And we know they're so powerful, these halachas, these 18, that no one's able to override them. So one of these 18 was these halachas. Let's see it. Kulam Shemayin Asa Davein V'chitem Asa Daniel Gazar. V'loi Kibi going to tell me the Ma'aseh Daniel tried it, but the island wasn't Mekabelis Gzeira. V'asa Talmidei Hillel Beis Shammai, and they were able to pull it off at Gazar V'Kibel. In came Ma'aseh Dusa the Rav. What is Rav coming and saying that Daniel's the one who's geyser? It's not called a Gzeira if no one's listening to you. Very nice, you had a good idea, let's make a Gzeira, but if no one's doing the Gzeira, don't tell me it was Daniel that did the Gzeira. The Ma'aseh was Talmidei Beis Shammai Hillel. Ella, you're going to tell us as follows. Daniel was Gazar L'Beir. What's the problem? Daniel saying there's a problem of chasnus. Therefore, in the city, it's aser. Va'asi inu kin Talmidei Beis Shammai Hillel, and they said, well, the Gazar filu b'sada. So tomorrow, Yehuda Nasi, how could there be hechamatz of Mishra Takanto Talmidei Beis Shammai Hillel? Now we just learned a second ago. We have the same problem that what? Ein bezdin yachal avalto divi bezdin chaverim kin gadol men b'chacham minyan. So we're back to square one. V'hoi da'am Rabbi Mechana Rabbi Yechanan b'kol yachal avalto bezdin divrei bezdin chaveroi chutz b'shmoina asa davar. These shmoina asa davar, they're so powerful. Sha'afilu yavoi eliyo bezdinoi ein shaymalai. So again, how in the world do we understand that Yehuda Nasi was matakilu Talmidei Beis Shammai Hillel? On that, the Gemara answers, Amar Sharsha Matam. That what? That the Be'etzim, you're going to tell me that you can't be mevatel. This Shmai Nasa Davar that's so powerful that you have to wait till the Hayulu Pashani Surah. In a scenario where it was what on a certain level was accepted. Hayul, the what? Upashani Surah B'Rav Yisrael. But Shem L'Maisel, Upashani Surah B'Rav Yisrael. Domer Shmuel Bar Abba, Rabbi Yechanan. Yashu Rabbi Seinu Bat Kol Shem Shel Upashani Surah B'Rav Yisrael. V'samchu Rabbi Seinu Divrei Shimon Gamliel. V'adivrei B'Elazar Tzaddik. She'yayim, and we all know, ain't guys ring Zera al Tzibur. Ela in Kain, Rav Tzibur Chayil Lamaba. Domer Rav my crowd. We find this in the pasuk. One Lamed Vav and Bais says in the pasuk, V'me'era atem norim. This is talking like the bunch of saying, with curse you should curse me. Ois atem kayvim l'maisa. You go in here and you continue on me. Hagoy kuloi dafka, when the whole Klal Yisrael accepted upon themselves the curse. When it's a gzeir shekol tzibur yachal amaboy. So he could go kuloi in, but he lay. So we're back to over here. We're talking about the shemen, which was a tzibur. Shein yachal roiv tzibur yachal amaboy. Therefore, it wasn't considered a gzeira of the Yudches. Gufa, we just said earlier, that the peat and the bread, v'shimna and the oils, yenon u'b'nesein, kul mishmar nasadavin. So what is this b'nesein mai? Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak, gazru al b'nesein nidas, that they consider already a nida, me'arisusan, even though the ktanis, that's not really possible of nida, we make them the halachas of tamei. The problem is, because of the oils. So tomorrow, my omid the Shem pass. Why is it better that when you tell me the Shem is better? I'll rather you have to read it. Al pitam shimnon. The problem is mishum yainon. That's the source. The yain, we all know yain brings the passion. Rashi's masber shayain bayer boy, and it can bring them to do znus, the chasnus, etc. Vayainam shum nesein, v'nesein shum davar acher, and even on this davar acher, val davar acher mishum davar acher, which we're going to have to see. In fact, the Gemara, you're telling that b'nesein was that b'nesein's deraisi. The Scheiner says in Torah is chatim bam. The Moran says deraisa says what? After the zainu moi savashav the chavim loy v'asein v'gazeh that feel the shav the chavim. In fact, the Gemara Shemei Chai Dami Ki Yasser Bencha, like it says in the pasuk, Ki Yasser Bencha Machar, right? It's come to tell us the rabbis Kol HaMesiris means everybody, means the entire umois, not just the zayin. Michael Ameimal the Raisa Betzem is only Yasser what Ishes Der Chasnus. V'aseinu Gazeh feel Der Chnus. In fact, the Gemara's nus was always Yasser. Nam Bezdina Shashem Gazu the Chsev. We all know the Ma'aseh with Tamar. V'Yarmi Yehuda Itziv V'Tisarif. Ella the Raisa was what Oivik Chama Ba Bas Yisrael the Mashcha Besrei. When it's a goita from lady, there we understand Nashim Daitan Kalas and he can schlep it to Zabed Zarah. Avi Yisrael Abalav is Chavim Lai. Vasinu V'Gaza Fil Yisrael Abalav is Chavim. In fact, tomorrow Yisrael Abalav is Chavim was Allah Chamashim Sinayu. Dama Ma, we all know with Pinchas and Zimri. Haboil Aramis Kanaim Paigabai. Amalei, the whole Ma'aseh Pinchas and Zimri, the Raisa for Hasich Ma'aseh Shaya. Someone to say Punkfaker Pinchas and Zimri, but Etzim was Betzina, but for Hasich everyone know about it, whether it means in public or people know about it. V'asinu v'gazru feel b'tzina. In fact, tomorrow, b'tzina nami bezdina shechashmanai was ready gazru. The chiyaser of dimi amar bezdina shechashmanai gazru. The Yisrael haba avodas kechavim. We learned this earlier. Chayv mishum nashga. Nashga means nida. Shivcha avodas kechavim. And a similar means the goyim. Gimels for the goya. And eishes ish. The chiyaser rav and amishum nashgas. He doesn't take the eishes ish. He puts it back basically for nida, shivcha, goya, and zoyna. Instead of eishes ish, he basically zoyna. So what do you tell me? It was always us. The Gemara answers, Ki Gazer Bezdin Shechashmanai was what? Bia. Dafka Tashmish. Ava Yichud Loi Vasin Begazer Afilu Yichud. In fact, the Gemara Yichud. Nami Bezdin Shel David Gazer. Damar Review the Bais Shah. We learned this in the Gemara. Actually, we learned this Gemara in the beginning of Sanhedrin. Very fascinating. The Maisa with Amnon. Amnon and Tamar. Amnon and Tamar were actually half brothers, half sisters, but they had different mothers. Tamar came from Macha, and Amnon came from what? From Achinoim. However, he had a massive taiva for his half-sister. And what happened was, Yenadav, which was a friend, we learned this in Gemara and Sanhedrin, we said this is not called a friend, but he said he gave him an eitzah to say, oh, make believe you're sick. Right? Make believe you're sick. Lamaisa, she'll come, she'll visit you, she'll take care of you. And Kachava, while she was visiting him, he went and he violated her and he was honest her. So we said from there, we said that it's also to do yichud. But also show the Maisa with Amnon and Tamar, they said it's also to do yichud, Gazal yichud. Amri, Hassam over there, the Bezdin of David was what? They said yichud Bas Yisrael. But yichud David chavim loy. Va'asu inu came the Tamid b'Shamai and Gazal yichud David is kechavim. In fact, tomorrow, you tell me that it was Bezdin of David that was guys this whole yichud. Yichud Bas Yisrael deraisi. Damar Reb Yechon Meshuvim Shemin Tzedek. Remez. Where do we know the yichud in Torah minayin? Like it says in the pasuk Shenemar Ki Yisitzcha Achicha Ben Imecha, where it talks about your brother from your mother is going to schlep you to Avodah Zarah v'chulei. Now, what's the effect tomorrow? Dafka a brother from the mother? Why not a brother from the father? So the Gemara is masbid that a brother from the mother is able to be miyachid with the half siblings because a mother is able to be miyachid with. There's no problem. But a brother from the father comes out in order to have a good, very close relationship with your half siblings. You constantly have to live by them. By living them is a problem. Why? Because it's your stepmother. You're only a brother from the father. So you see that the yichud is only dafka zok the Gemara when the yichud dafka when the brother from the mother, where there's no problem of being close. That's when we're worried about Yishlab. And we're always worried, even a brother from the father. But the reason why we're bringing out, there's a remez to show us that yichud is also by who? By a stepmother. Ki yisizcha achicha ben imecha. Frak the marv'chi ben. Dafka the ben imemis, ben ha ben imemis. Ela ben could be misyachid the mimai. And therefore he can be very close to his siblings to schlep them to Avodah Zarah. Vein acher, however, when you have a brother from the father, so it comes as his stepmother, vein acher misached is in kol haraisha b'Torah. My answer is Yisrael be'etzem and daraisa yichud is only daraisa at eshishish. V'asadav becomes a fila yichud pnuya. Kain talmidei beisham beis hillel. V'aso talmidei beisham beis hillel. The gaza fila yichud avedes kechav. So maya davar acher mishum davar acher. We quote in the Gemara on top of the Amud. Davar acher mishum davar acher. Amr Nachman Yitzchak Gazru al Tinaik Oive Kechavim. They said, why is Mam Shalach v'Tomei? Dam Zayr Tzar Gadol Hayali Etzor Asi. Reb Asi Etzor Yechanan. Reb Yechanan Etzor Yanai. Reb Yanai Etzor Reb Nasim and Amram. Reb Nasim and Amram Etzor Rebbe. That what? That Tinuk Oive Kechavim. When is he come Tomei Memasai Mitame Beziva? V'Amali, he said, from what? Mi ben Yoimai. Ukashabasi Etzor B'Chiamali no. Mi ben Teisha Shanim Yom Echad. Ukashabasi v'etzeisi b'davra lifnei Rabbi dvarai lifnei Rabbi. When I asked him, I brought up this matter. Amalini says, Hanach dvarai. Forget about my view. V'echaz de Reb Chia. What did Reb Chia say? The Amar Tinoik Oivi Kechavim Emasai Mitame Bezivi. You know when? Ben Teisha Shanim Yom Echad. And the reason is Hoyel. When Lamazayim and Aleph Hoyel V'roi Labiyah Mitame Nami Bezivi. Again, the reason is, on a simple level, is Mutam we're worried about Gzeira Shalei Tinak Yisrael Ragel Etzlev Mishkav Zach. Am Ravin Hilkach Ha Tinaikis. If we told this to Tinak, same thing with Tinaikis. Abedes Chav Baskim Moshanim Yamechad. However, Rolabiyah Mutam and Am Beziva. So I come up Pshita. Why would he think otherwise? Same thing. Zachar and Akeva. They're both royal tashish. Mokdamar Mal the Tema High in the case of what? By the Zachar Yadil Arguli already starts having a type for Tashmich. Moshaim Gan the Akeva Hala Yadil Arguli Kamash one. We already say this by the Akeva. Mistamech va'azul Reb Yehuda Nesiya Kasider Reb Samloi Shami. He's walking and he's leaning on his shamish Reb Samloi. Amalei. So Reb Yehuda Nesiya says as follows: Samloi, Loya Isa Emesh. You weren't with us. Bais Medrash Sheketarnu Sashemen. This is what we spoke about. The Shemen is mutter. So Limloi says to him, Amalei. Reb Samloi tells Reb Yehuda Nesiya, be a man. These days, let's be real. Tatar for pass. We should make it already mutter to do the pass. Amalei, no. We have a problem. In Kain, Karulan, they're going to call us, you know what they're going to call us? Beis Dina Shari, the Tanan. Hey, Rabbi Yosef ben Yezer, Israel, Ayil Kamatza. We're going to talk about this grasshopper. It's a certain type of species. We're going to explain it later. In the bottom of the Amid, exactly the 4 kosher grasshoppers in the Torah. Al Ayal Kamatza, that it's Dachan, that it's Tahar. Val Mashka, Bais Medrash, in the northern wall, the Bais Medrash. There were the dam by the Zarah, it's also Dachan, it's Tahar. Val Diyikrav Lamisa, whoever touches a mace, Misav is Tameh. And what? The Karla Yosef Scheiner, we're going to see it on the base. We're going to have to understand how in the world is touching a mace, Tameh, considered a kula. We're going to see him, Yetz Hashem, that the Raisa was much more chomer. He went back, sorry, the Rabbana was much more chomer. He went back to say, Dafka the halachas of the Raisa. We're going to discuss this. But in a simple level, they called him, because he was matir, 3 different things, they called him the person that was matir. Amar Leisa says, I don't understand. This is some light telling you to see a Hasam Sharit Tlas. Yosef ben Yezer was matir 3 things. Umar, you would just want to be matir the Shemin. So you have enough, you have another strike too. You can be matir also the pass. You still have one, you have more to go. Tired to Davi. No, Amar Leisa, Yehuda Nesiya tells him some law, I know. I know, is ready matir something else. This is a sugya of Gittin. A person goes over to his wife and says, this is your get, and is it a get or not? So they hold, ain't a get. Shita the Tanakamas on a simple level, it's a get lachamisu. If a get lachamisu ain't a get. Because the Tanai never happened. V'tani Allah, v'Rabbi Seinu etir l'nasav. I mean, who is this Rabbi Seinu? Man Rabbi Seinu, Rabbi Yehuda Mishmul. It was Bezdin in the Sharm Hashcha, which was what? This is the Bezdin. The Domat Hashem, Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya. So Savri lo Kerab Yaisi, why? Because Rabbi Yehuda Nesiya held like who? Kerab Yaisi dam is manashul shtar mechichala. By putting in the date already, it's considered like a tonight. From today, you will be divorced if I never end up showing come back after 12 months. And I see he died. If he died, he's not coming back. V'amar Rab Abba b'redechia barabba. Rab Yehuda Nasi higher v'lo idolai kol shaitai. They were in what? All his days, kol shait, they weren't agreeing. But I want to say kol siyas, chaver weren't agreeing with him. Amar le'belazal hu saba, that he was taken from the bezin of Yehuda Nesiya. Kisharusa, when they were mad to this woman, I get it there with their mad because they say, do we say la'alter? Shirusa de layasi. The Maisis ain't showing up. We see Harag is in front of us. We have to wait for the 12 months of the tonight to kick in. For tomorrow, simple question. Why are you asking on the scenario of Yehuda and Nesiah? We have a different shayla. We have Bechlal the shayla regarding the Bechlal the Mishnah Ditnan. There's a scenario where everyone agrees that Avodah is considered a good get already. And he says explicitly from them, everyone agrees have a get. They're kindly tonight. Look at the same shaylo. Is not coming to Malachim Beis Chaydish. They kindly tonight. So why are you asking when you come into Machlekes? Go ask in a scenario where everyone agrees. Happens to be this Saba, this old person was talking from their Yehuda and Nesiah's bezin. So you figure, let me ask you, but I could have asked him the Mishnah. But since he was having a conversation with him, it made sense to ask him, specifically that case. Amar Abayo. We continue the sugya of Gittin a little, and he says as follows: everyone agrees when the husband says, only when the chama comes out in the morning, that's when it's a get. It's not going to work. It's a get lachamisu. Almanas. Everyone agrees, and it's the opposite extreme. He clearly, explicitly says it tonight. Almanas sheteitzach hamenatika machshav kamalei. Where's the v'chimais b'laylo havada tinavi? They get mechaymu kadar v'una dam v'una kalayim almanas kam machshav dam. So where's the machlekes? Loi nechluku elo be'im teitzeh. There we have a shaylo. Rabbi Yehuda nasi sabad kabi yisi damas as manishish tam mechichala v'haveleitz kemahayoyin. A Mesi Kamachshav a Mesi. Rabbanan Lesul Rabbi Yosef Havalik is that Gitach a Mesi great though without mentioning it, therefore it's considered a get lachamisa, a get lachamisa ain't a get. Kufa. Heyid Yosi Ben Yaeza Etzreira Al Ayal Kamatsu. We said this ayal. Ayal is a certain type of species of grasshoppers. Dochon. Now Mashkabes Mentvachaya Dochon Medikor Lamisa someone touches a Mesi himself. The Korv Le Yosef Shire. So we have three things: the grasshoppers on a simple level. We have the case of what? The mashke in the basement, the chaya, and then we have the third case of touching a mace. So let's go through the first case of a grasshopper. So in order to understand the little context, what in the world's going on with the grasshoppers? In the Torah, there are four types of grasshoppers that are very explicit that are tar. We have the arba, we have the salam, we have the chargol, and the chagov. All those four, there's no question about it. The Torah explicitly tells us they're kosher. Now, it's a big shiloh and chulin, we're not going to go too much into it, that if it has the common characteristics of what? Of these type of grasshoppers, it's kosher. What are the common things? It has to have 4 legs, 4 wings. It has to have the legs have to jump, so 2 jumping legs, we call it. And the fourth tonight that these 4 grasshoppers have is that the wings cover roiv aguf. We're going to see in Amud Beis what happens if you look at a microscope, it's 50.01% that it's a roiv. But on a simple level, those grasshoppers weren't just a majority, it was a constant majority covering the guf. Now what is the halacha? We're going to see in a moment with the grasshopper that has a reish aruch, an elongated head. Now, what's the shiloh? If you look at the grasshopper, it has all 4 what we just said. The wings, the 2 jumping legs, it covers right with the guf, 4 legs, etc. The problem is, if you look at the 4 grasshoppers in the Torah, it doesn't have, his reish is not aruch. So how do we look at it? Do we care at the 4th stadim, or do we say, wait a second, very nice as the 4th stadim, but none of the grasshoppers that are kosher have the Rosh Aruch, and therefore it's us. So it's a big machlekes. Let's see it inside. My ayol come to Rav Papa Amar Shishiva. Rav Papa wants to say it's the Shishiva, that it has these 4 things, but the problem is the Shishiva has this Rosh Aruch that we said is a problem. Rav Chia Baram Nishmei Deula Omar, we're going to see it has the Susvil. Susvil, Rav Papa Amar Shishiva, what's the machlekes? Vikam Ifli Rosh Aruch. Mar Savar Rosh Aruch Aser. One man Dharma wants to say that what it's aser, because that's we're going in the sugya and chul, and the reason why it's aser lemaisa, because if you look at the 4 grasshoppers in the Torah, whether it's the arba, the salam, the chargol, the chagov, doesn't have this head, this long-shaped head, therefore it's aser. V'mar sava rosh ha'aruch lemaisa muta, very nice as a rosh ha'aruch, but it has the 4 things that we need: the 4 legs, the 4 wings, the 2 jumping legs, etc. So Rabbi Yosef ben Yaisa wants to go like what? Like the man, the armor that it's kosher. And the Chok and Rabbi Yosef ben Eliezer want to say it's pasul, it's aser, because again, it has the Reish Aruch. Which is Rabbi Yosef ben Eliezer. What are we talking about? Susvil. That what? No one argues. The aser. Why? Because it doesn't have those 4 grasshoppers in the Torah. It doesn't have it. One lam zayin and base top of the helmet. Rashi says you can't see benaim elabit simslam adei medida. So that's the shayla kamifli. Mar sava, which is Rabbi Yosef ben Ezra, who says, I don't care. Look at the signs. The reality is it has the right. And it has to be able to see it by Naim. That's the machlekes. We said it's tahar, it's dachan. My tachan, Rav Amadachan mamish. Maisa, this mashkin itself is considered the gamri tami. The gamri tavish malam adachan l'tam acherim. Aber Thomas atzmi yishben. Rav Amadachan mamish kesav Thomas mashkin. Betzim is the abanon mechi gazer abanon. Thomas mashkin. The arm of mashkin b'mit l'chayil gazer abanon v'shmalam adachan l'tam acherim. Aber Thomas atzmi yishben. Why kesav Thomas mashkin atzmi daraisa. So again, to give a little more context, what is this machlekes over here that we're saying between Rav and Shmuel be'inyan Tumas Mashkin? If you look inside the Torah talks about a case. We have a sheretz that fell into kli cheres. The first pasuk clearly says that whatever fell into the kli cheres is tummy, and then it says in the pasuk over there is no shayla that it's tummy. Then the pasuk says v'chol zok the pasuk v'chol mashke. Asher yishte. They bring that over there, and the pasuk it clearly says over there, over there that anything that becomes, regarding this kli cheres, anything that the mashke it becomes tummy. So the shaila, do we read it? The mashke itself is tummy. It's a separate tonight. Do we clearly see all the liquid in this kli cheres since the sheretz comes tummy? Or we read it no. V'chol mashke, any mashke that touched this kli, we learned regarding the zayin mashke that a kli cheres needs to be hochshel l'kabel tumah. So avad the mashke some of the rice is not tummy. It's just talking about an order regarding the kli cheres to be makabel tumah or not. So that's the machlekes. Then what? Rav Amadachan mamish ketzav tumas mashke zon derbanan, because the Torah is not talking about tumas mashke; it's talking about the kli cheres. The chigaz derbanan tumas mashke, the alma mashke b'im the chayla derbanan. Mishmalam no dachan tamachem tumas asmun yeshben ketzav tumas mashke. It says clearly in the pasuk deraisa. The tamachem derbanan chigaz derbanan mashke the alma b'mashke b'im the chayla loy gaz. Now the yikar of lemesa misav. We said if you touch the mace of a body, you become tummy. The currently Yosef shaya. In fact, tomorrow right away Yosef asar mivoile. He's not matter. He says you come tummy. Whoever died, you touch his mace because he died from the cherub of the mace, and becomes tummy. The Gemara answers, the yikar of tummy. If you, Reuven, touch Shimon who's dead, you come tummy. However, the yikar of Torah becomes Levi, touches Reuven that was tummy. There, that's when the rice is because I feel the yikar. Came Rabbanon. Not over here we're saying, not Rabbi Yosef. Rather, Rabbana came and said that what they bad with tummy. Va'asi came Rabbi Yosef and it said va'ukmed daraisa that a person who touches becomes tar. Therefore comes that he's mekel. In fact, tomorrow the yikr nami daraisa. Clearly, even so in Reuven that touch him in the mace comes Levi touch Reuven is also tummy. Why? Who the chsev chalashe boy hatame yitma clearly says become tummy. Rabbana kamed the Rav Shmei the Mazut Rabbi Rav Nachman Dam Shmei Rav Nachman the rice is as follows. The yikra b'yikra, when a person that's touching the tamei, chiburin, I call it the mashal like a current of electricity. When Reuven's touching the mace itself and comes Shimon while Reuven's touching it, then there's a halach of Tumah Shiva. But once you let go, then comes someone and touches him, Reuven that touched the mace, shalai b'chiburin, then you only tamei Tumah Serif. Va'asiinu came the Rabbanim because of ilu shalai b'chiburin that was Tumah Shiva. Va'asiinu came Yosef, and while Yosef and Yosef said Ukma daraisa, they only become what Tumah Serif. So comes a Yarmekel. Daraisa of Zaktamara daraisa mahi. Dichsev and again Mesachol nefesh Adam v'Tumah Shivas Yamim. V'chsev v'chalashe yigaboy hatami yitma v'chsev nefesh anagasti tamid arv. And it clearly says Tumas Erev and Tumas Shema. Ketzad kan b'chiburin when you become is what the Zayin Yomim. Kan shaloi b'chiburin. And therefore you what? You become Tamei Erev. And that's what it means. The Yikrav, someone who touches him, Dafka, when you touch him, that's when you Tamei Shivas Yom. Don't they already tell you, like, Titlame, Bookies, Rikis, empty pitchers. But Rav Nachman, Hachyam Rav Nachman. Rav Nachman rather said as follows. Sofek Tuma B'Shus Rabim Hitelahan. Rav Nachman, we all know the Allah of Sayyid Sut. Sofek Tuma. This is what we're discussing. There's a whole shayla that what you don't touch, Isser. And this is what he's saying about the Yikrav, someone who touches a mace. If you touch a mace, that's when you tamei. But if it's only a safek, you're not tamei. In fact, the Marva, you tell me this is the halachas of tamei mace. The halachas of Masechta, we learn this halach of tamei rishus harab and tamei rishus yachid. Depends. But rishus harab and tamei safek is a safek tamei rishus harab is tar. Safek tamei rishus yachid is tamei. We learn it from Saita because Saita is beichud. And that the more answers are, that what came Yeshua and said, no, we should pass like this. Yeshua has to put beams in the sword. He went and showed everybody, look, Rabbi, here's Rishus Harabim, here's Rishus Yachid. Why in the world did he do that? He did it to show you this halacha is a Savik Tam Rishus Harabim, Savik Tam Rishus Yachid. Akan Rishus Harabim, Akan Rishus Yachid. Yosk me the Rabbi Yani Amalahu. However, Rabbi Yani wanted to say, he's saying if you're tummy and you have the option to go to the mikvah, go to the mikvah. Only in a scenario where we're talking about mashkin eichel, we have no choice. That's when we say the halach is a savik tumah, b'rishus harabim tamei, sas tar, savik tumah, b'rishus yachid tamei. However, but Rabbi Yani said, if you have a choice, if I had to go to the mikvah, there's no shayla. If you could do it, do it. The hashlokas, we spoke about the cooked foods, minan immediately, the rod. Where do we know that it's also lachar? If you think about it, a simple halacha, the ingredients are kosher, everything's kosher about it. What's the problem? Rabbi Yechonah Makar says the pasuk. Eichel, this is talking about Klal Yisrael, is telling Sichon when they're going through Canaan. They said, please give us food, bekesef. Please feed us, bekesef. Teshbireinu, provide us, v'chalti umayim, bekesef, titilim shesisi. We'll pay you. What do you have to lose? We all know tourism is good for the country. It brings in the economy. So we make a dia kamayim. Ma'amayim shaloi nishtanu, so to have Eichel shaloi nishtanu. Alamata, so the Mar chitim asal koyres, you make the kloyas, you make the parch grain, echnami dasurit. It's mutarin, even though what it was the shtanu. So to have eichel shaloi nishtanu b'yosef. In fact, you tell me it's the shtana chitin that you grind it, which is the shtana. Chitim with the chanan. Hachanami dasur v'chitim hachanami v'atani chitim asan kloyos. And the kamachin v'asosas, whether it's the flour or the fine flour, shalayin mutarin. Kloyos says mutar. Elakamayim that what ma'amayim shaloi nishtanu mibriyasin idea or through the fire. Avaychu shaloi nishtanu mibriyasin idea or. For tomorrow, look inside the pasuk. Midi arksiv. It doesn't mention a word about fire. Elo midirabanan went to top alam and chesem and aleph. That what Rashi's masber chayshish what that you might eat him. Shami yechlena dover tameim. However, Taisus argues, the top Taisus says, V'yosef near the fire, shetam mishum chasnus. Like Rashi brought down in the Mishnah, not mishum, davet tomei v'kra, only a smachta ba'am. Omar, Rav Shmuel, Bar Yitzchak, Merav Kol HaNechel, Kamei Chai. For example, pears, you can eat it raw. Ein bo mishum b'shuloi v'kchav. That's how they read it, Besura Masnehachi. However, B'pumdisa Masnehachi, Rav Shmuel, Bar Yitzchak, Merav, Kol shein HaNechel, Shulchan Malachim, Lafas, Beis HaPas, Ein bo mishum b'shuloi v'kchav. Someone wants to say if you can eat it raw like fruit, wants to say it's what? It depends if the malachim would eat it. Dogim tanim, you got to cook it. However, you're not going to serve it to the king. The ardi, which are mushrooms, v'daisa, like a farina that you make out of wheat. The point is, you're not serving it by malachim, but if you need to cook it, that's a simple enough gemina. According to the first mahalach, it has bishul v'kchavim. According to the second mahalach, lamaisa, you don't serve it to the kings, and therefore it's not considered bishul akum. So meluchim is salted, and lamaisa now helps that you're able to eat it. Ein bahen mishum b'shulai v'kchav. Rav Yosef im sla'an, if he roasted it v'chavim, samich Yisrael aleim mishum meruvet tashilin. We all know regarding erev tashilin, it has to be food cooked. V'yav dino v'chavim kasa da'aris, they made this fried fish with muryos aser. And the way they made the muris, they made it also with flour. In fact, the more pshita. What do you mean there's flour in it? Why would I think otherwise? The more answers, Tim, you'll tell me the harsh and the ikr, the fish is taken out the flour. Kamash Milan, that the kimcha is the ikr, and therefore has a problem of what? Bishul akur, because kamach is not something you can eat. Chai. Basically, a guy went, whatever reason, whatever his cheshbon was, he wanted to basically do a controlled fire, contain fire, in order to clean up this whole front, the whole meadow. So he goes, he takes the whole thing and burns everything up. Next thing you know, there's multiple grasshoppers, we just learned. Grasshoppers are permitted. The four in the Torah. Now, do we look at his bishul akum or not? The reality is, he wasn't there to roast grasshoppers. He was there to burn his grass. Kol hachagovim sheba'agam asur. So, what's the case? Heichidami. You don't know if these grasshoppers are kosher. Other way, you're going to tell me bishul akum? Why is it a problem? We're talking about some basically chavim goes to singe the hairs of the head of an animal that was shechted, and able to eat its ears that melted. Because what? It's not bishul akum. Because the guy did it for a different reason, not for bishul. He's doing it for the hairs to burn. He's doing it to cut the grass, to burn the grass. He actually burnt it. My answer is however, yesterday we did that off. We're very bothered. What's the halacha? What are we even mentioning? That what's the isser? What's the heter? What's not? However, Taisa says, maybe it makes sense of Taisa. Maybe that's why we mentioned this whole ma'aser, because what's the whole point of telling us it's aser? What do you mean? It comes that we're talking about that you don't know if it's kosher or treif. It's aser. However, the Taisa says the reason why we mentioned this to tell us that chagavim don't need a shchita. Maybe that's the whole reason why we mentioned this Gemara. Otherwise, there's no reason to mention if we're talking about grasshoppers that we don't know that it's a treif. What's the havmi to say you could eat it? So we just said a moment ago, he's singeing, he's burning the head for the hair. Sichsa is a yasid, like a peg, Rashi says. He throws a latuna into the oven. However, the cover by Yisrael kara mi kara. The yid had a kara, a gourd, he put in the oven before the guy even came. Shapir dami, it's mutter to eat it. In fact, the pshita. Why would it be aser? We just learned about it. That's why Rabbi Yechanan. There's no problem with bishul akum. He's not doing it to cutting. He's doing it to cut. He knows doing the first peg. Zok Tamara Mao the the way we look at it, lamaisa, we look at it like you're here to cook. You're cooking your peg, and therefore what? Kamashma, it'll be asa. Kamashma l'shirurei mana kamachavin. It's not called bishul b'kelim. Zok Rashi ain't bishul b'kelim. Rather, what you're doing, the whole point of this yasid is not for bishul, rather to make it stronger. Rabbi Yehuda Mishmuel. Heniach Yisrael basar agabi kechalim ubavi kechavim v'havach boy. Lamaisa, you have this yid. He puts on the meat on the gecholim, comes the guy and flips it. Mutter. So what's the case? Hey chidami, cooking his own pshita. The guy didn't do anything. You're going to tell me the lahafach ba? Lo have a bashul, and why my mutter it's bishuleb the gechavim ninu? The Maran says late tzrichi. You know what the case is talking about? The lahafach have a bashul b'tarti shoy. It would have took 2 hours. That what expediting the food is considered milsi. Kamash mulon, it's not. We're going to see in our base that Avodah don't think that it's not nothing, because we're going to see in our base where the Yisrael does the opposite procedure, where the guy puts down the food. We can actually make a kavachayim and the Yisrael finishes it. It's considered bishul Yisrael. So Avodah doesn't mean lav milsi. Rather, the nekuda is it's not something that's going to affect the bishul, and therefore it's mutter. We make a diak only when it's machal b'nusay mishul lav dechavim. Ain't a kamachal b'nusay. Yesh b'mishul lav dechavim. My answer is some over there. By Rav Asi kegoin the oiser b'silta. He puts it in the basket. The shakle oiver kechavim comes. The guy makes a brand new ma'isa. The oiser b'tanura. Since he went and made a brand new ma'isa, then we consider b'shul akum. However, over here it's not considered no ma'isa. It's just continuing the bishul, and therefore it's not a problem. Tanei ameachi maniach Yisrael basar al gabe kechavim by kechavim mahatich by achi yav Yisrael misakneses to come from shul. Oimi Bais Medrash ve'einoi chayshish. He has nothing to worry about. And the same thing would happen with the isha. Shayfeses ishak der al gabe kiro basar ve'des kechavim one lamed chesem ve'beis umegisa zok Rashi. You flip it with the spoon. Achetavim Bais Hamerchatz in the bathhouse. Oimi Bais Knesses. The Rishonim, they bring down the guys, doesn't mean the shul, she's probably not going to daven, rather means menashuk. However, einoi chisheshes. Iboilu, iniach oive kechavim v'hafach Yisrael ma'u. Amr Nachman, it's kavachayim, that's what we just said a moment ago. Gomer b'yadu chavim mutter, gomer b'yadu Yisrael, kol shekain, that it's not a problem. Itman amir rabbi Omar rabbi Barachana rabbi Yechanan. V'amir amir rabbi Barachana rabbi Yechanan, bein sheni echad v'chavim v'hafach Yisrael, whether the guy put it down. Bein sheni, and then the yid flips it. Bein sheni Yisrael v'chavim. Motivena also until when? Ache tehet chilasa the gomer b'yadu v'chavim. Amar Avina hilchasa harifta the shagar v'chavim. You have this bread that the guy throws into the fire. V'afa, whether the Yisrael bakes Yisrael, inami shagar Yisrael v'chavim, or inami shagar v'chavim afa Yisrael. It doesn't matter if he lit the fire. Whoever baked the inami shagar v'chavim v'afa v'chavim as Yisrael v'chata b'chituya, as long as you stir the coals. Shaper dummy. And again today, I think if you look at most people, the yid they're just makbid that the yid lights the fire and everything else the guy could do. Dag maliach. What's the point of maliach? Maliach, the nekuda is by melichasa, by salting it, you can eat it without cooking. It's like herring. Dag maliach. Chizkiya sharei. Lamaisa is not considered bishul. Rabbi Yechanan Lamaisa says aser because you could eat it. Herring you could eat. Now that's the bishul. Beitz tzluya. What's the nekuda tzluya? Lamaisi didn't touch the egg inside. So bakar for sure because didn't touch it. Lamaisi you cooked it. Ki aser avdi mama echad dag meliach vecha beitzitzulia chisker bakar for sure v'yechan aser. However, chia parvava ikla beirish galusa amila they said as follows: beitzitzulia mai and amilu chisker bakar for sure. However, you're going to see the Rish Galusa, his relatives they were somewhat of a mafia. We're going to see in a moment. This is the problem. Zvid opened his mouth. He didn't realize the Rish Galusa that Rashi loy mahalu. They were dangerous people, and they ended up killing him. Don't listen. That it's aser. You know what they did? They poisoned him. They gave him a cup of vinegar and they killed him. They poisoned him. Wow. Hakafrisin. Dr. Ashi, it's a Scheiner the pre-ain. It's like a husk, and it covers it. You could eat it raw. Some people cook it, some people eat it raw. Hakaplutais. Dr. Ashi's karsi. It's leek. You could eat it raw. V'amitlaya. The Gemara is going to explain in a minute what it is. V'chamin. It's hot water that nothing changes. V'akloyos. Parched food. Shelahen mutarin. It's not a problem to cook it. Beitz it's liyasura. What about shemen? Review nasi bezdin and nimno love tiru. So the Martani Hamitalaya that we're talking about he for Salaya and she also. My she also. Amar Rabbi Rachan Amar Yechanan Ha'arbain Shnin Denafik I hope the Mitzrayim. We're going to see about this Ma'aseh Mitzrayim in a minute. But it was 40 years Rabbi Rachan did the Amar Hashit and Shnin Denafik I hope the Mitzrayim. 60 years of light pligi Ma'abashnei. When he said 60 years, it was 20 years later. So now they're ready up to 60 years. They're what? Ma'asu Bizra. Bizra means seeds. The karpasa of cress, or bizra, the chisna of seeds of figs, or bizra, the shavlusa, which is fenugreek, v'torla b'hadadadi, they soak them together, or pepashuri with lukewarm water, v'shavkalei the makabel, they wait till it grows, u'maisi chatzavi chadasi, they take these brand new barrels, u'molu mine, they fill it with water, v'tarb when they soaked it, gargishta u'medabkin bait, very fascinating, they did it with clay, and they put in the seeds with the clay, v'ayilun lebei bani, and they went to the base of Merchatz, and the Nafka, when they came out from the base of Merchatz, Melavali, it was ready growing shoots, Fachlim now they were able to eat it. However, the Kiri, they were chilled from what? Kayar, Mibinta the Rishayu, Mibinasa the Rishayu, from the hair on top of the head, Atur for the Charayu. So it was a crazy nest that happened. I see it a minute ago, either it was magic or it never really happened, but the truth is, within moments of putting these seeds, they put into lukewarm water, they go to the bathhouse, they come back, it was ready, everything grew. It's not really possible, just mere words. Someone to say, Bimilin, they did it with magic, and that's how they're able to pull it off. Kaisvan is pseil shel dates, shel oidik kachab, shel huchmuchamin b'yoyre g'doyla. That they put in massive pots, asur b'yark tana mutter. Bezi yark tana, what's considered a small pot? It's a small type of bird, yachal ikonis b'seicha. Maybe they chopped it up and put it in. The head, it's roish, sipar dwar yachal ikonis b'seicha. Like Kasha as follows. The first brisa tells us it's also command on nice and tam lepkam aser. And the second brisa says it's mutter, command on nice and tam lepkam, and it's mutter. Rav Sheshes. Hi mishcha shalika. You have these boiled oil. They're my. It's aser. Rav Safar l'maynecha shal manav shach. Mishum what? We're really going to mix the yain b'shemen. Iruve misra sari. We said it's going to spoil. Mishum shalev chavim nechlu k'mashu chai. You can eat it with the shemen with bread. You dip it. You go. You have these oils. These garlic oils. They dip it. Mishum geulei. You're worried about the geulei v'chamli. We learned earlier the missions of the chavnes and damagamba when we said it's mutter. Boy minei Rabbi Asi. Hani ania hiniki shaliki, you have these cooked dates. There are mai. So chuye, if it's very sweet, like tibaylach devad shari, because you can eat it raw. Miriri, they have to cook it. Like tibaylach is bitter. Like tibaylach devad esiv. Tibaylach mitziyai bein and bein. You can eat it. Dr. Rashi deitzchak mai. Amalu mai tibaylachu. The Rabasi asar. Rabasi, what's the Scheiner? Rabasi already said it's also manu. Who's this? The Rabbi also manu Levi. Shisiya. What is shisiya? It's a tafshil they made out of kernels. So there's two types of shisiya. It's very crucial. Rashi's masber. There's two types. One made out of kernels. You put it in the oven. And some you made out of lentils. However, the lentils, they were very sweet. And you had to put chaymitz. Chaymitz is a problem of yain. So it depends. Rav Shari, Avodah Shmuel Levi Asri. So bechiti v'sa'ari, kul amalei pligi the shari. Because there's no problem of what? Of lentils of wine. Betavchi dechala. With the lentils of vinegar, there's a problem of vinegar. Kul amalei pligi daser. Ki pligi with what? Betavchi demai. You have these lentils of water. The shaylas, do you make a gzeira to chaymitz or not? Barsa v'gazrinan ha. The water to chaymitz or to ha. Which is what? Avodah Levi Shmuel. Avodah Shmuel Levi. Umar Rav Savar like Azrina. Vikadam bit of Chayda Maya with lentils or water kolam like Pligid Aser because we have a Chashash Gzeira. Keep Pligid Bechid Basari. Mar Savar Avodah Shmuel Levi said Azrina. The chitin out to the lentils up. Umar Savar like Azrina. Amar Rav Trey Mini. These types of lentils. Shisia Shadar Bazile Gedoli David. We all know what David's son was married. Avshalom. He ran. David HaMelech went running. And Barzilai Hagilah gave him food. And what did he give him? Barzilai Hagilah Dila David Ichsev. He says, what did they give him? They gave him Mishkav. They gave him the beds. They gave him Mishkav, the Sapos. Sapos is bowls, Vikliyaitzer and pottery, Vichitim. They gave him Chitim, Visarim, wheat and barley. And here it says Vikemach, Vikali. Vikali is what we're talking about. Is this Shisa that we're talking about, the Shisa. But they gave him Kemach, Vikali. Upol v'adashim v'kali. So there's the ladashim v'kali and the kamach. One made it of flour, that there's no chashash of chaimitz, and then they have the lentils, which said it's too sweet. They gave it out from, they put in chaimitz. Kamach v'kali, upol, when the beans, v'adashim v'kali. And Zaktamara nowadays, v'hashnu the kamafki tzani, they get baskets and baskets of shukan adoi, v'les techayish la devur l'shmuel, v'levin, there's no one that's chayshish, v'shmuel the levin, it's mutter, Yetz Hashem. We're going to pick up from the bottom, Lamed Chesem and Beis, by the two dots.